All right, I will say a good Erev Shabbos, everyone. A great schos, Baruch Hashem. To be here, I'm just looking for the sponsors for tonight. Steve is not here. Okay, to thank our sponsors for this evening. To thank Cherry Applebaum for sponsoring tonight in honor of his grandson's first visit east and his son Jacob's new apartment. Beautiful, incredible. And to thank Akiva Lawrence for sponsoring in honor of Emeretz Hashem, his Kabbalah. So the next time he davens for the Amid, to use a lot more nigunim and a lot less nusach. Emeretz Hashem. I'm sure that's how I have it. That's how I have it over here. That's how I have it. I can only read what's in front of me. And I will say, of course, a tremendous yashikoch to Reb Tzvi. What's tonight? Is this Yabchek? Reb Tzvi. Incredible.
Now for something different.
Incredible. Beautiful. Thank you so very much. Beautiful. Chavra, always important to be makir tov to Reb Tzvi. Mamish makes it's the gashmius that often makes the ruchnius come alive, and it's the ruchnius that infuses the gashmius with additional kedusha. So we'll say, I still haven't decided on a permanent mahalach. I'm still a couple of possibilities that are up in the air. All Piagetna related, although after Tuesday night. I thought maybe about doing Likutei Moharan, doing a little bit of Rabbi Nachman, back to our roots. That's how this started. Many, right? You remember that? Years ago, right? We used to have Old Ma'at in Russia, Bisponant, Reish Pei Beis, yeah? Okay, we'll see. But tonight, I want to do a very beautiful piece. We're probably actually going to take us. I was going to say tonight. It's probably going to take us like the next couple of years. But in Eretz Hashem. But I want to start a piece with you tonight from the Piaget's Chovas HaTalmidim. I'll tell you a little bit about the Sefer in just a moment. So I got a little ambitious. I have 2 packets for tonight in case somehow we finish the first. Okay. Let's try to get through one thing at a time over here. And over here. Give to the Gullus table over there also. I don't know, what did they do? It's like the penal colony. What did you guys do over there? What happened? You get the chicken nuggets over there? Is that what happens? Yes, they're chicken nuggets. All right. It's Dr. Pepper and chicken nuggets over there. All right, so we'll say. So just to give you a little bit of context, we're picking up here actually like a little bit in the middle. But let me just to give you context. This sefer called Chovas HaTalmidim was a beautiful sefer written by the Piaget's and the point of his sefer was as follows. We'll say a lot of times when it comes to chinuch, when it comes to education, so often the responsibility for positive education is foisted upon the Rebbe, the teacher. What the Piaget's understood is that in order for learning to occur, there has to be almost like a contract between teacher and student. Right? The teacher takes it upon himself to be a good teacher, right? Whatever that means, different methodologies, right? Piaget was a master educator. So even before the world even knew the concept of multiple intelligences when it comes to learning, right? The Piaget understood it, right? The Piaget understood there are kinesthetic learners. He understood there are all kinds of people who learn in different ways. So there's an obligation upon the teacher to be able to go ahead and ensure that he has the ability to convey the information to the Talmud, to the student in the right way. What the Piaget also advances is, but there's a responsibility on the student. In other words, if you want to learn, then as the student, I have to make the commitment to engage in the educational process. Right? So we see this theme over and over. It's not just about a classroom in general. Leadership could only be effective when there is a bought-in constituency. Right? If the flock is not interested in being led, you could have the most incredible leader, and it's not going to make a difference. Right? It's not going to make a difference. There has to be this partnership between the flock and the shepherd, right? Between the leader and between the congregation. Ultimately, again, between the teacher and the students. And actually what the Piaget's does in this sefer, interesting, that's why it's called Chovas HaTalmidim. obligations of students. In this Sefer, the Piazetzna outlines, if you want to be a learner, if you want to be a student, here is what you need to do in order to become a student. It's a very different kind of Sefer, right? There's no shortage of svarim to teachers, right, and to Rebbeim, telling them what they need to do. Now, right, the Piazetzna does that also. But the thrust of this is, student, you want to learn? You want to make something of yourself? You have to engage in the process. And it's in this Sefer that the Piazetzna outlines what it means to engage in the educational process. So, I'm picking up over here in the middle of the 4th chapter. You see on the first page, it's Mem Dalid. It's page Mem Dalid, and it has a little asterisk. You have the asterisk in there? Yeah. Maisa, you see that? So I will say, so this story, it's a Maisa tonight. It's a story. This Maisa is going to change your life. It's going to change your life. And if we have time, which I'm confident we will, the Meretz Hashem, if we have time, I'm sorry, did someone say something? Was there somebody muttering under their breath or something? If there's time, then in Meretz Hashem, what we'll begin to do is begin to see the context in which this statement was mentioned. Because remember, again, we're going to see that the story is not a standalone story. So we'll say, let's take a look. Look, the Maisa itself is so profound. He says, Maisa v'sandler echad. He says, ultimately, again, there was a story. B'sandler Yehudi, ani be'eretz Yisrael, shedar al imadech. We'll say, just before we go on, of course, again, we dedicate our learning. Even though, again, by now, almost 3 months into this war, it kind of goes without saying, but nothing could ever go without saying. We dedicate our learning, for the success, Emeretz Hashem, of our precious soldiers, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should allow them to be matzliach, should give them hatzlacha b'chol ma'aseh yadeim, should allow them to be safe, should allow them to come back to their family, b'shalom and b'karov. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should have rachmanis on all of our hostages. And again, it's overwhelming to think about another day and another week with these precious men, women, and children in circumstances that we can't even begin to fathom. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should have rachmanis on them. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should have rachmanis on us. And Emeretz Hashem bring them home to their families, b'karov. Amen. So he tells a story. Maisa, b'sandler Yehudi ani be'eretz Yisrael. There was once a story. A sandler is like a shoemaker. A shoemaker, right? Story of a shoemaker, a poor shoemaker in Eretz Yisrael. Shedar al ema derech. He lived on the side of the road. Okay. Now this shoemaker, where did he make his money? Because he lived on the side of the road. So remember, again, people would go ahead and travel, and their shoe would break, something would happen. So they would come in right to his office, right? They would come into his house, and he would repair their shoes. Okay. So one guy, his sandal strap ripped, and so the sandler, the shoemaker, would repair it. Another guy lost his shoelace, he'd repair it. Fine. Again, this guy, he never was really successful. His parnasa was mitzum-semes. Mitzum-semes means exact. Exact. In other words, Baruch Hashem, he was, paycheck to paycheck, right? Day to day. He made what he needed in order to survive. But look what he writes. He says, Aval shalev HaTalmidim gamhu v'gam ishto bara. We will say, you know what? He was very tranquil. I'll say, by the way, isn't that the most beautiful thing? How often is it in life that we go through life thinking that money is the key to tranquility? If only I had more money, I'd have more yishuv hadas, I'd have more tranquility, I'd have more nachas ruach. Now the truth is, there's no question that certainly having more money comes with benefits. Being able to pay your bills has benefits, right? Being able to save has benefits. But I will say one thing we should be clear on is that life tranquility does not come from money. I want to be clear. There are things that come from money, right? There's definitely, again, it's certainly what we'll call like a certain level of inner quietude that comes from knowing that you don't have to about paying your bills, about paying your mortgage, about keeping up with your needs. But to be shalev, real life tranquility, doesn't come from money, I will say. Does not. It's the greatest misnomer in life. And you can ask people. Let's say, I know a lot of people, and I'll tell you the truth, like a lot of people, Baruch Hashem, who are very, very, very successful, who have more money than they'll ever know what to do with. And I'll tell you, they're not very often. People who outside world look like the epitome of success, they're not tranquil people. I don't mean that they're unhappy people. I mean, they're not settled. They're not settled people. They're not settled. It's very important for us to understand because we're always striving. If only I had. So again, this guy at the end of the day, he lived paycheck to paycheck, but he was shalif. But he had tranquility. Gam ishto abanav. He was tranquil. His wife, his kids. Ki haya ha'ish yareas Hashem ma'od. Why? Because he was a person who revered HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In other words, we'll say, when you have the Ribono Shel Olam in your life, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a constant fixture in your existence. So that's what gives you tranquility. Both sides, this is incredibly important. This is why it takes us a very long time to get through anything in the Piaget because everything the Rebbe writes is laden with meaning. So we'll say, if life tranquility doesn't come from money, then where does it come from? Because we'll say, what do you want more than anything in life? More than anything in life, I want tranquility, not happiness. It's not happiness, because happiness is a function of feeling at peace. So where do I get that from? I get that from a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I get that from ultimately, again, a relationship with God anchors me, steadies me, and gives me a sense of inner peace. So listen to this. He says, V'gam, esanche beiso limei shekol chaya ish alei adamos k'tzarim v'arayim. Ve'ikar heima chayma nitzchim asher ba'olam ha'alyon. And this simple shoemaker, clearly not such a simple guy, right? The Heilige Yid, right? This simple Jew taught his family members that at the end of the day, this world is temporal and fleeting, right? So, okay, you have a little bit of discomfort in this world, it's fine. At the end of the day, the ikr is live a life of meaning, live a life of impact, live a life of connection, so that your life in the world to come, ultimately again will be meaningful and beautiful. Shetis anik hanefesh bis karvusa el tiferes ikar page bemhei malchus shamayim v'tehana meziv shchinasa yisbach. We'll say, I wish I could go to this guy's house. Right? Wouldn't you love to have a farbrengen with this guy? Yeah, you have to bring your own stuff. But Lamaisa, right? But Lamaisa, like, how incredible would it be, like, to sit with a yid like this, who has just enough money to survive, but is so content, is so happy. His wife is content. His kids are content because they recognize, because he's imbued with them the understanding that the ikr is not this world. And the ikr is not about finding comfort in this world. The ikr is about meaning, creation of relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if you have that, then Emirat Hashem, you'll be able to reap the benefits of that for all eternity. What good is all of the wealth if at the end of the day anyway, you can't hold on to it? Good. So we'll say that's the guy. That's the introduction to our sandal, our shoemaker. Watch this. Lamdan lo haya. You know what I'm saying? Ultimately, this guy was not a lamdan. Not a lamdan means like he did not know how to learn. He wasn't doing daf yomi. He wasn't learning b'nei machshava tova. He wasn't learning Chovas HaTalmidim. He was not a lamdan. Aval kfi yechalto gam bayom gam balayla kol shosh panui lomad vispal Hashem. But what did he do? When he had free time, he davened and he learned. Well, I tell you, Sandler, what did you learn today? I don't know. Whatever. Not a lamdan. He's not taking bechinas to smichas chaver, right? He's not, again, simple Jew. But when he had the time, he learned and he davened. V'yesh asher tis'orer nafsho v'tislayim ol yispalel u'lishtapech la'Hashem be'ein mafriya mebalbel. Supposed to listen to this, but there were times where this is so beautiful, where he was so overcome with a desire to daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They both say, what's the problem with davening? Right? So first of all, somebody else's words. We'll say also the big problem, again, is there are distractions. Right? It doesn't make a difference how many times you announce to please turn off your cell phones. Right? It doesn't make a difference, right? It always goes off, and it's always the guy with the craziest ringtone. Right? Some rapper comes on in the middle of Chazar Sashatz, right? What's the I'll say it's hard. When a lot of us experience this? We experienced this, during COVID, when people had this very guilty epiphany. What was the guilty epiphany? That I have more kavanah davening in my house than I have davening in shul. So there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one is the pace. COVID, no one was going anywhere, right? So Lamaisa, might as well kill some time davening, whatever, it's either that or sit with my family, so I might as well daven, right? So Lamaisa again, so there was that, and there was also this idea that the truth is, like most of us don't have an experience of davening distraction free. It's hard, even in shul. Even in shul, we'll say there's a ton of distractions. So what's interesting to know to us is we think this is a new thing. It's interesting today. It's very popular to blame everything on technology, right? If you're looking for the sources of all ills in the world, right? It used to be tznius, right? And then it was lace top shadels, and now it's technology, right? It's always technology. Let's say technology has its pitfalls, but technology is not the root of all evil. V'haraya, the same problems that we have today, people had even before technologies. V'haraya, what happened? The sandler, right? The sandler, you know what happens? When times he wanted to daven with real kavana. And where couldn't he do it? He couldn't do it in his house, and he couldn't do it in the base medrash. It's sandler, like what exactly are the distractions, right? Somebody bought a new mule, what exactly is it that is catching your attention over here? So I'll say, so what would he do? Listen to this. He would go ahead, v'yotzami base. So when his soul ignited on fire, and he wanted to daven and pour out his heart to HaKadosh Baruch Hu without being distracted, v'yotzami beso hatzar umidiraso bas cheder echad elayar. So he would leave. So apparently it could be that this guy, this sailor, didn't even live next to a base medrash, right? He lived in a one-room house. So it's kind of hard to have any kavana in a one-room house. So what would he do when he wanted kavana? He would go out into the forest. He would go to the forest. And both when people would see this simple shoemaker davening in the forest, they would see his face was on fire. Mishabeach umoda umahalal umedaber laHashem, and he'd be praising and thanking and talking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ki'ilu gam be'enei habasar shelo ra es hod kisei kavod l'fanav. I both say, when people saw this guy davening, they thought that if you would see it, you would think that he was talking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Moshe was right in front of him. That was the level of dialogue. That was a level of connection. Chamo pachadu. And people saw it, they became afraid. They saw the intensity of his kedusha, and they were afraid from it. Avamakira vyadu kvar va'amru bevadei hasandler achosid hu ki ken yechanu makirav mi bein hagoyim. So I said, but everyone who knew him knew. They called him the chassid. He was the chassid, right? At first it was called the sandler, but the people knew that this guy was a pious and righteous individual. Okay. Vahi bereishes yimei ha'milchama achrona, kasher Chovas kol over orach. So we'll say at the end of the war. So we'll say, so again, the Piagetista is describing over here, I just want to point out the First World War. So we'll say, so I just want to point out, the Pashtos, the Piagetista is telling a story on Maaseh Shahaya. This was a story that occurred. So let's listen to this. It was at the end of the days of the First World War. Kasher Chovas, we'll say, by the way, it's interesting. How does the Piagetista describe the First World War? How does he describe it? Yimei ha'milchama achrona. Now, milchama achrona could mean just the last war, right? The previous war. And I will say, human nature is every single time we encounter tragic circumstances, we assume that this is the worst that things could be, and they can't get any worse. I will say, and that's why when even compounded tragedy, I will say, think about this for just a moment, right? You remember Chalamayit Sukkis, when Lucy D, Hashem Yikom Dama, and her daughters were murdered, right? On the Bekat HaYarden road, right? On was it Route 60, Route 60, right? They're murdered there. And you remember, like we saw that story, and we're like, was it Pesach? Pesach. Oh, right, Pesach, Cholamayit Pesach, right? And I would say, remember you heard that story, and you thought to yourself, this is a family wiped out, virtually a family wiped out. The overwhelming nature of a parent and children. I was and in our mind, that's the worst thing that could happen in our days. And then again, we see what unfolds over Simchas Torah, and this is also part of what's so difficult to comprehend. So at what point does it stop? At what point do we reach the peak of atrocity or the peak of tragedy? At what point does it get that this is the worst? So it's interesting that everybody always views the worst that they've experienced as the worst. This is the pinnacle. So the Piagetista says again, I will say, the Piagetista Hashem Yikom Damo, who was murdered by the Nazis, Yimach Shemam B'Zichram, in the Warsaw Ghetto. Right? He thought the Milchama Achrona, he thought this was it. It's over. So it was during World War I. Kasher Chovas Mikol Over Orach. So what happens? There's no pedestrian traffic. if there's no pedestrian traffic. V'nifsika gam parnasa saduchuka. What happens if there's no pedestrian traffic? No pedestrian traffic, no parnasa. No parnasa, right? There's no one shoes to fix. V'yavar yom ve'i lechem. Gam lo gam le'ishto banav. So obviously, remember again, this was a guy who was living day to day, as it is. So obviously, a couple of days go by, no parnasa. If there's no parnasa, there's no food. There's no food. V'hinei gam yom hasheni kulam re'evim v'yalad. So we'll say, now listen to this. Second day comes. Everybody's hungry. V'yalad of haketanim misanim ubochim, and his young children they're hungry, right? They're hungry and they're crying. Hay avitna lanu lechem v'lo nigva b'ra'av. And the children are crying out to him, Father, please, just give us bread that we shouldn't die from hunger. V'hinei gam yom shlishi kulam kvar shulchan. So we'll say day number 3, nothing to eat. So remember, at this point, everyone's too weak even to move. So they're all just laying down, sleeping. Chaloshim v'homim kiyonim, weakened. And then we'll say homim kiyonim means like not moaning or chirping. Moaning is like, right? Moaning like a dove. Avi lechem. And all they could say is, Father, bread. Rak sifsoseyam naos v'kolom lo yishamea. Their lips are moving, but their voice cannot be heard. Ki chazak aleim hara v'koach elam litzok. Because the famine had become, their starvation had become so intense. And ultimately, again, they don't even have the strength to call out. V'gamhu gufal nechlash ubirkav koshlos minat somim min godol shivron libal ishto banab. And the sandler, right, the chassid, so his pain is compounded, right? Why is his pain compounded? Number 1, he also hasn't eaten in days. And number 2, he sees the suffering of his wife, the suffering of his children, and he's heartbroken. He pulls himself together, the chassid, and he walks out of the house. Ishto tzaka, his wife calls out, Hai bali, al teitzeh mizeh. She says, please, my husband, don't leave. Im namos barav, if we're going to die of hunger, kulanu yachad namos. Then let's die at least together. If we're going to die, let's at least die together. Avalhu gam az lo sar bitchono me Hashem. But the chassid, he did not give up on his belief in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'yomer, lo ela maves ani holech. Rabbi said, listen to this phrase. Listen to what he says. I am not going to my death. Rak ela elokim chayim. Rabbi say, what a line. I'm not walking to my death. I'm walking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm walking to life. I'm going to the forest. Elayar. Lispala elavisha b'shamayim ani holech. I'm going to daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Sheyaseh imanu neis v'chayinu. I'm going to ultimately again daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ultimately again that he should perform a neis. And that should say incredible. That's the emunah of a yid. I will say that's an emunah of a yid. I'm not going. His wife said, don't go. She thinks that he's just going to die outside because he can't watch his family die. So she says, don't leave. He says, I'm not going out to die. I'm going out to live. I believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I have emunah HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and things are going to be okay. So I'll say last paragraph, page Mem Hey. What happens? He's walking, he's crying. He raises his eyes to the heavens. Ana Hashem. Od kodem shabarases olamcha. Bacharta banu liyos banecha. Avadecha krovim elecha. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even before you created the world, you chose us, Klal Yisrael, to be your servants, to be your children. We'll say, by the way, also very beautiful, reminiscent of Bnei Machshava Tova. Bacharta banu liyos banecha. Avadecha hakrovim elecha. Right? I'll say there's a lot of overlapping themes in the Piagetzna's work. Remember again, Piagetna and Bnei Machshava Tova, 2 stages of relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You could be an Eved or you could be a Ben. The goal is ultimately again to not worship from a distance like an Eved, but to worship from closeness like a son. Tamid darash chinoscha hakadoshim ana ba'aretz. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you always kept your kedusha with us in this world. Va'osanu al kanfei neshar me'alisa. You've lifted us up on the wings of eagles. Af lamarom el zra'acha ve'el cheikcha kiviyachal. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so often you've lifted us up into your embrace. Page mem vav. Page mem vav. Umat tov hayalanu az. How good it was, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when you embraced us. Kasher hayalecha davar asher dibarta imanu. Lo min hashamayim bilvat hishmata es hod kolecha. Rak gam banu dibarte. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we don't just hear your voice from a distance, but we hear your voice inside of us. Nigleisa bin navi ubi ishmi binenu. You revealed yourself through the prophets. Shamanu es kol Hashem edabre manu. We've heard your voice. Mochiach umiyashar. Sometimes you rebuke us. Sometimes you put us on the right path. Gama olam kula chal mipanecha mipanenu. The world trembles, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, before you and before us. Ki mi kol basar asher lo yechas mipnei ha'anoshim asher adon ha'olam shokin imayim. Makiv osam afdar b'kerev gufam v'nafsham. Because what flesh and blood cannot quake, cannot shake in fear from in front of the people, Klal Yisrael, who HaKadosh Baruch Hu rests His presence within. Okay. Uma od mar lanu ata she'esarta es panecha mimenu. So listen to this, the Chazak HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It is so bitter for me to think that now you've hidden your presence from me. You've hidden your presence from me. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, where did you go? Where did you go? He goes on, he says, Halev miskagel al kidushascha asher nistera vanefesh soekes kervani avi. My heart yearns ultimately for your kedusha that has been hidden away from me, and my soul cries out, bring me close, Father. Ve'en kashev, but no one's listening. Ve'af b'shashem is ora here tshuva b'ish Yisrael. And maybe I'll say, you know what? I have thoughts of tshuva, right? And ultimately, again, because of my sins, I have been distanced from you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'll make you a deal. I'll come closer to you, right? Maybe I've distanced myself because of my sins. I'll come closer to you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I need you also to come closer to me. We need to travel to each other. Gam az mar lanu, ki me'az histarta me'itanu takfu alinu kol kach tsaros rabos. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, from the moment you hid your face from me, right? He's talking in the plural. From the moment you hid your face from us, there have been so many tsaros. Hein be'inyane parnasa, ve'hein b'shar inyanim. Ultimately, again, whether parnasa, other things, asher kol kach mitamtemos es halev, umatridos es hanefesh, achem aviros asanu adas kunin chazom. So this is incredible. The Chassidus says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you need to understand that there comes a time when suffering is so intense that it turns us against you. Strong. I will say, this is very important. People think that suffering brings people close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I will say, sometimes that's the case. Very often that's not the case. Very often, suffering does just the opposite. Because often what suffering does is when a person has to survive in an ongoing difficult situation, it takes all of their power, all of their koach, to just keep their head above water, that they have no bandwidth for God, no bandwidth for spirituality. And sometimes the suffering is so intense that the resentment of it, the resentment of the situation, replaces everything. So this chassid, right, this chassid is engaging in a dialogue with Chashmonis, saying, Ribono shel olam, my wife and my children are dying. My family is literally dying right now. Where are you? You want me to do tshuva? I'll come back to you, but you have to meet me halfway. I'll come close to you, come close to me. Baruch Hu, I'm scared that if things don't turn around now, the difficulty of my circumstances is going to turn me, the chassid, against you. Ribono shel olam, lo alai bilvani mispalel. I'm not just davening for myself. Rak al kol banecha b'nei Yisrael. I'm davening for everyone. Avarachamon, compassionate Father. Eich azavto es banecha ba'olam kol kach atzu va'om levadam. We'll say, this is such an overwhelming statement. Compassionate Father, how did you leave your children in a world that is so sad and so overwhelming? How did you leave? It's incredible, right? How did you leave us in a world all by ourselves that is so sad and so overwhelming? Let's say, what a statement. Where are you? You know, it's almost like the Chassidus is saying, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I can deal with anything you throw my way as long as I know that you are with me. If you're with me, we got this together. But if I'm alone, and you leave me alone in this world that is so sad, that is so heartbreaking, and is so overwhelming, I don't think I could do it. Ve'ech tabet, kishem isbosesim b'dam hakosem v'tachrish. Avalo. So we're saying again, how can you look when you see, literally means when you see your children ultimately again wallowing in the blood of their wounds, and yet you remain quiet. Avalo es parnosenu bilvad ani mevakesh. But I'm not just asking parnosa. Rak oscha avi ahovi v'eskidushas malki ukidoshani mevakesh. I will say this is so profound. The Chassid says, I'm not just asking you for a loaf of bread. I'm not asking you just for a couple of dollars. I'm asking you. For you. I'm asking you, for you, my father, for you, my king. I'm asking you, Karev, O son of Iskal, bring us close. Because you see, the Chassid felt in this entire circumstance, what he felt was that these circumstances were a result of HaKadosh Baruch Hu removing himself from the Chassid's life, from the Chassid's family. This is not simply give me a couple of dollars or a couple of loaves of bread. This is give me you. I need you to come back into my life. Rachim aleinu, pedeo sanu, shlach lanos Mashiach tzidkecha. Please, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, bring us close, reveal yourself to us, have compassion on us, redeem us. Send Mashiach, v'na'avadcha b'yira u'bi'ava, kasher levavenu mishtokikim miyachon, and we'll serve you. Help us out. Bring us close. Come back to our life. Bring Mashiach, bring Geula, and we will serve you in the way that we should serve you. Okay, what's the last paragraph, page Membav? So again, the chassid is obviously an intense tefillah, crying. Vayi'af. And ultimately, again, he fainted. So as ultimately, again, remember, he hasn't eaten, he didn't drink anything. So let me say, he fainted and he didn't have the koach, to come out of his faint kite, to come out of it. He goes on, he says, Vihine, listen to this. Vihine, heriach reach tov chazak ma'od v'tashav alah ruach ha'ma'at. Suddenly he smells something fragrant. And the fragrant smell awakens him. Vayar, vihine perach yofem ma'od asher gadol biyar, umimenu nodef recho ha'aref. He opens his eyes and he sees, literally, he's lying on the ground. He's right in front of him, this beautiful, fragrant flower. And the flower itself, again, literally is giving off such a scent that it wakes him up. Vayischazek, vayamod, vayiktzar, saperach, va'atz lebeso lahashim matas nefesh ishto ubanov bazal kopanim. So we'll say he has this great idea. What does he do? He picks the flower. He says, let me run back, because this flower totally revived him. He's going to bring it home to his wife, to his children. Again, he doesn't have food, but maybe he could restore them just a little bit. The same way the fragrant scent restored him, the fragrant scent could restore them. Page Mem Zayin. Watch this, I will say. He's running home. And what happens? A carriage comes, and a man is in the carriage. Carriage stops right in front of the chassid. And the guy sitting in the carriage calls out and he says, Shma lecha ani, lama lecha perach kazeh. The man, right, you can imagine, the well-dressed man in the nice carriage says, poor man, what do you need such a beautiful flower? Tna osali, ve'etna escharcha kesef. Give me the flower and I'll pay you. Vayana ani lo imkar bekesef. Then he says, I'm sorry, I won't sell it for money. Rak im titein li kikar lechem ba'ad ishti ubamai hagovim barav zeh shlosha yamim. Etein lecha saperach va'od avarecha lifnei Hashem. So then he says, listen, I have no use for money right now. But here's what I'll do. If you give me a loaf of bread, this way again I could go ahead and give to my wife, to my kids something to eat. I'll go ahead and I'll give you the flour. And not only that, I'll daven for you. He sells the flour for a loaf of bread, and Baruch Hashem, he comes home happy that now he could restore his family. Incredible. So the unwritten part of the story is, he comes home, they have a su'udah, and Baruch Hashem, at least for now, everything is okay. Watch this. Vayiba Laila. That night, Vayares Aviv Bechalomo. The chassid has a dream, and he sees his father in the dream. Vine korea es begadav, and his father's clothing is torn. Tsoek uboche umake alibo. He sees in this dream his father's clothing is torn, and he's screaming, and he's crying, and he's beating himself on the chest. Va'omer dalacha. And the father now talks to his son, to the chassid in the dream, and he says, "Shetfilas chasher hispalalta hayom bayar." The davening that you did today in the forest, also barash lamarom. Your tefillah ascended to the highest levels of Shamayim. V'chol malachi rachamim misoru v'tzaku al Hashem. Ad masai lo sirachim al tzoncha midukoim. V'abanin banecha hatavuim. Kol kach b'tzaros et shimcha edam shochachim. U'b'chal kol kach shurim. And the malachim, kiviyachol, ganged up on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the angel said, Ribono shel olam, enough is enough. Enough is enough. How long are you going to allow your children to suffer? How long will you go without having compassion on them? How long will you allow them to be drowning in sorrow and difficulty? And even when they're drowning in sorrow and difficulty, Shimcha lo shachachnu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they never forget you. The Malachim are literally besieging HaKadosh Baruch Hu, saying it's enough. It's enough. You have to stop. You have to stop. You have to bring an end to their suffering. You have to bring the Geula. Mechitzas habarza asher bein Yisrael avim shabashamayim. That literally, again, that iron barrier, right? That iron barrier that divides between you and Klal Yisrael, you have to bring it down. Once you bring down that barrier, all of the tefillos that were prevented from ascending on high suddenly ascend. And I both said, listen to this. The Malachim were successful. And they finally convinced HaKadosh Baruch Hu that it is time to bring Mashiach. But see what's happening? The tefillah of the Chassid tilted the scales. The Malachim cranked up at HaKadosh Baruch Hu, enough is enough. And the Ribbon Shalom acquiesced. He said, okay, it's time to bring Mashiach. The Yatza Kruz, the announcement went out, Shekevan she'ata b'tfilascha kirafta asaketz, lochein yisgale lecha haperach, asher bo lahachios mesim. And therefore, because you Chassid, because you, my son, were the one whose tefillah was the one who permeated Shamayim, convinced the Malachim, convinced HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you were going to be the agent, ultimately, of redemption. Specifically, he quotes over here from the Medrash in Koheles Rabbah that says that Tchias HaMesim, how does resurrection take place? That there's going to be a very fragrant flower that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to produce, and ultimately, again, the fragrance is going to bring the dead back to life. What's the connection between fragrance? Remember again, in Bereshis, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates man, the Torah says, Vayipach ba'apav. How did HaKadosh Baruch Hu create man? He breathed life into his nostrils. Shabbos said this idea, this is why, by the way, on Motzei Shabbos, right? We smell besamim. Why? Because on Motzei Shabbos, the soul is sad that Shabbos is departing. How do you make the neshama happy? Scent. So the way it works is Tchias HaMesim happens, as mentioned in Koheles Rabbah, through a fragrant flower. And they decided, this is the father saying to the son, they decided that you, because it's your tefillah ultimately again, that is going to bring about Gula, they were going to give you the flower. And you are going to be the person who takes the flower and does Tchias HaMesim. V'osi shalchu lavo elecha b'cholam halayla lo diacha. And again, you were supposed to bring home the flower, and I was going to tell you in a dream tonight that your job is shetelech lemaras hamachpela. Your job was to take the flower, go to Maras Machpela, go to Chevron, the resting place of the Avos and the Mos, Ushar Kivros Hanavim Lachayosim, and go to the other graves of the other prophets, the Aviu es Mashiach Zidkenu. That's what was supposed to happen. You were supposed to bring home the flower, your tefillos worked, Gula was going to come, and I was going to appear to you tonight in a dream and tell you what to do with the flower. B'chol hashamayim v'heichale el yonasa ora v'simcha. Both in the entire celestial sphere, ultimately, again, there was such joy and happiness. Malachi el yon v'nishmos tzadikim samchu. Everybody, a big simcha and Shalom. Mashiach is finally going to come. V'ra'ash gadol. It's that ringtone, right? Although that's not the rapper, right? V'ra'ash, right? V'ra'ash gadol v'yalala. Nasa itzel hasatan v'akastile. So I'll say, so again, all of Shamayim is happy. There's one entity who's not happy. Who's not happy? The Satan. Satan is the Malach HaMaves, right? The Yetzirah. Satan's unhappy. Ma'ye asu'ata. So the Satan says, how do I foil this plan? Now again, everybody's on the Messianic bandwagon, right? Ultimately, Mashiach's going to come. Tchias HaMesim. Satan says, how do I foil this? Ultimately, the Satan, you know that guy in the wagon? The guy in the wagon wasn't a guy. The guy in the wagon was the Satan. The guy in the wagon who bought the flour from you for a loaf of bread, he was an agent, an emissary of the Satan. And his job was to steal the flour of Tchias HaMesim. Look how the story ends. Page Memches. V'ata hoy vavoy b'ni. And now the father says in the dream, oh my son, hay vavai, right? Ay ay ay, ay ay ay. Lo lecha levad hareosa. You didn't just harm yourself. Rak lechol Yisrael, af likdoshe Yisrael. Hakol haya biyadcha. Everything, my son, was in your hands. Gama avos, gama neviim, v'chol atzadikim, af hamashiach biyadcha. Everything was in your hands. Ves hakol ba'ad kikar lechem ibadata. And you gave away eternity for a loaf of bread. You gave away eternity for a loaf of bread. Hasatan v'chol malachi chabala atam smechim. Ultimately, again, the Satan, all the destructive angels are now so happy. V'alinu mitzachakim umashalim. Boshim ubochim anachnu kolanu v'kulam tzoakim v'alecha shoalim. And now everyone in Shamayim is so tzabrachen, so broken, so sad. And everyone is asking, Mihu ha'ish asheres kol ela hecharif. Who is the man responsible for all of this destruction? V'es'ora kedusha kiba. Who is the man who is responsible for extinguishing the light of kedusha? Ha'im yachal liya she'ish Yehudihu u'b'shem Yisrael Yechuna. Is it possible that this was a Yid? It couldn't have been a Yid. It couldn't have been a Jew who did this. Because a Jew would never give up the flour of Tchias HaMesim for a loaf of bread. Let's say a very powerful story. Look what the Piazetzna writes. V'yata bachar Yisrael. So the Piazetzna says, and now, young man, doeg ata harbe ala ani hazeh, she'ibed v'hipsid es kol HaKodesh, v'atzadikim u'bias HaMashiach ba'ad davar ma'ashavach. So also you write to read this story, and there's like righteous indignation. Chassid, come on, you should have known better. Should have known better. There was obviously something special about the flour. The flour wasn't there when you started, right? The flour suddenly appeared after you fainted, you woke up. Come on, you're a chassid. You should know better that something is afoot. How do you go ahead and sell something so special for something so insignificant? So there's this righteous indignation. It says, V'imalav tidag shelo hayu lo lasos acheres, ki lo yoda shenisayon lefanov, eich tidag aftich tzof alecha, Sheteda shetamid ata omi says. Well, tell me this piece. Let me tell you this piece outside, and then we're going to do this theme next week. I will say, what's the point of the story? What's the point of the story? The point of the story I will say is that sometimes we are holding eternity in our hands, and we give it away for a loaf of bread. And I will say, this story plays out in all of our lives, all of the time. In, we'll call it simple ways, non-dramatic ways, and dramatic ways. Right? I was saying, it could be something as simple as, and I hate to keep on using this example, it could be something as simple as a person is davening, and they check their phone in the middle of davening. What are you doing? What are you doing? Person's in a shir, and I check my phone. Okay, if you have, obviously you have something timely, so go do it. Go take care of it. If it's that important, go. It's okay. Right? You're potter. What are you doing? What are you doing? You have eternity. You have eternity in front of you. And you're giving up eternity for what? For what? To check a status? Right? You're giving up eternity for what? For an email that doesn't really matter? For a text that what are you doing? I would say, so often we have eternity right in front of us. And we just give it up. And I would say, you could go ahead and plug this into anything. A person has time with their family. Person is zochet to have family, time with their family. And I will say, what happens? What happens? Same thing, like, I'm just not present. I'm involved in something else. Time with your family is eternity. And you give it up for what? For what? Or Rabbi say, I have an opportunity to do a mitzvah. You know, Rabbi say, I'll tell you something amazing. I'll tell you something absolutely amazing. You know, it used to be, I'm reading a biography about the Ribnitzer Rebbe, an incredible tzaddik. And there was a story that was brought down in the book about the Ribnitzer was with the Skver Rebbe in Russia when Russia was attacked by Germany. And they were in the house and they wanted to go to shul for Shachris. But the bombs are falling. So they're trying to think like, should we go? Shouldn't we go? What should we do? Is there such sakana? So the Skver Rebbe turns to the Ribnitzer and says, Ribnitzer, are you afraid? The Ribnitzer says, no. Skver Rebbe says, let's go. They walked to davening. They walked to Shachris. in the middle of the German bombardment of Russia. I was saying, there's no bombardment happening in the streets of Baltimore, right? Most days, right? Right? Other kinds. It depends, right? It depends how they define bombardment. I was saying, there's minyanim all the time. There's shuls everywhere. How do I miss a tefillah b'tzibur? You're busy? Really? Busy? How busy? How busy are you that I can't make it to daven with a minyan? How busy am I? Okay, maybe the only excuse is like mincha during this time of year. You get shachris as early or as late. You can get ma'ariv as early as you're late. Why give up? What are you giving up eternity for? What are you sacrificing? What you're giving up eternity for what? Again, if you're giving up eternity for something really good, okay, then maybe there are certain things that are worth giving up eternity. Maybe there is something on Netflix that is worth giving up eternity for. Maybe it's possible, but I highly doubt it. He'll say, how often in life does it happen? There's an opportunity to Chassidus say, Klal Yisrael is at war. Do you know how many chesed opportunities there are? How many chesed opportunities? I say this all the time. We do not fulfill our obligation vis-a-vis Klal Yisrael by checking Times of Israel, Jerusalem Post, Arut Sheva 57 times every minute. That's not your responsibility for Klal Yisrael. Frankly, it does absolutely nothing. There's a lot to do. There's a lot to do on the Ruchnius side. There's a lot to do on the Gashmius side. Am I taking advantage of the opportunities to help my people? Or am I just simply too busy? Am I giving up eternity? Am I giving up eternity and simply giving away the beautiful flower of Tchias Mesa for a loaf of bread? We will say this is day in and day out. We are presented with dramatic spiritual opportunities for growth, dramatic spiritual opportunities for self-actualization. And we have it, it's in my hand. And then the carriage pulls up and offers me something else. And I'm like, okay, right? And I go ahead and I take that beautiful flower of spiritual promise and possibility and I give it away and I receive something so meaningless in return.
He thought Hashem was answering his prayers.
He should have understood. Again, life requires.
He's supposed to know what the flour is. He knows what a piece of bread is. He knows his family.
He knows.
But even more so, Taka didn't ask for bread. He asked for Mashiach.
That's
and
it.
He got it.
He didn't ask for a loaf of bread. See, in his tefillas, right? In his tefillas, he understood this is so much big.
He was so distracted.
This is so much bigger than a loaf of bread. So the guy who never davened for bread, when he sees bread, he's like, oh, bread, bread, right? When you see it, it's like, oh, all I can think about is bread, right? See, he lost his way. He got distracted. And the Piagetna says, how often in life does that happen? That we just lose our way. We get distracted. We give up the most beautiful things, and in return, we get absolutely nothing. We get a loaf of bread. So we'll stop over here for today. It's an overwhelming Maisa. Overwhelming story, overwhelming lesson. What we're going to do next week, I will say, is discuss, so how does this happen? How does it happen that a person falls into this trap of giving up a flour for the loaf of bread?
How is he supposed to know what flour is Mashiach?
I'm sorry?
How is he supposed to know what flour is Mashiach?
No, how is he supposed to know what the flour is Mashiach? Because he should have understood there was something dramatic unfolding over here.
The flour wasn't there.
Come on, look at the story. Look at the story. What's happening over here? There's a flour that was never there before, suddenly appears over here. That's it. It's just to barter for a loaf of bread. That's it. Come on, this guy. And remember, like Akiva said, he never davened for a loaf of bread. That's not what he davened for. It's not what he davened for. He was davening for something so much bigger. So as something appears, be a visionary person. So we'll say, stop over for tonight. Overwhelming story. Mirat Hashem, we're going to continue with this piece tomorrow. We'll say, we'll daven Ma'ariv in the shul. Shkoyach, everyone.
Why was it essential for him to be offered money and say, I don't want money, I want bread? I mean, what's the point of that?
Say again?